right, Dontaesboxingnation over here with the man, the miracle man,
I'm
Danny
feeling happy,
Jacobs.
Dante.
Man.
I got a chance to meet you, brother.
Oh,
it's been an honor, man. I've always followed your work.
I appreciate
I want to say I appreciate you for supporting the sport of boxing, doing such a positive job supporting us fighters. You put our lives on the line, and you do such a tremendous, respectful job of doing what you do for us, and I want to commend you, brother.
Dontaesboxingnation, what's going on, guys? So Guillermo Rigondeaux, who's fighting against Lomachenko December 9th, he just really said something very powerful and interesting on his Instagram the other day. He said, "I said it before and I'll repeat it now. On December 9, my only opponent is not Lomachenko. I am also fighting the system. Still, hashtag not afraid." You know, guys, this is why the new media movement is so important. Because as you see right there, listening to what Rigo just said right there, the new media movement has reverberated and resonated throughout the boxing community. Fighters are saying it loud now, and they are exposing the double standards that exist in the sport of boxing, largely because of new media. So I want to say thanks to Guillermo Rigo, thanks to fighters like Errol Spence, exposing double standards inside and outside of boxing recently, thanks to Deontay Wilder exposing the double standards. It's one thing for new media to expose it, but when you have a name on top of that, a name like Rigo's name, a name like Deontay Wilder's name, a name like Andre Ward's name, the message goes even further. It's like passing a baton to get to the finish line faster. Now let me show you something right here. This Fresh Fly shirt you're looking at right here, that's me rocking that new media shirt. That's the back of my shirt when I was out there in New York for the Charlo Lubin triple header out there. And this picture right here in particular, Guillermo Rigo, he put on his Instagram account. And let's go ahead and read exactly what he said. He said, quote, "This is a guy I trust when it comes to analyzing boxing, my man Dontaesboxing. Hashtag not afraid, hashtag new media." Thank you, Rigo. You know, the greatest thing about new media is before I came out, before I started doing this boxing stuff, there was really no representation for fighters on the coincidental list. They got treated like crap. They were extremely disrespected in the sport of boxing. Then all of a sudden, someone like myself, and now many other people, have come along, and they are starting to give all of the fighters the credit they deserve. Now all of a sudden, we're pushing this agenda to where all fighters are created equal. All fighters are treated equal. It doesn't matter how you look. What's more important is how you perform and your accomplishments in the ring. And that is how it's supposed to be. You know, I noticed recently, the majority of boxers and trainers that I interviewed, the majority of them, not all of them, but the majority of them, of all nationalities, race, and etc., when I asked them who's going to win this fight, Lomachenko versus Rigo, A lot of them have actually picked Lomachenko. But they always say, I'm rooting for Rigo. I'm just really, really rooting for Rigo because he's been done so wrong in the sport. He's been so disrespected. And you know, I find that really, really interesting because if you really look at it in microcosm, and I'm gonna use a really, really nursery and Disney analogy, but it's perfect for this situation right here. If you guys really, really think about it, boxing and the coincidental list is the Cinderella story in real life. If you really, really think about it. There are some differences which we're going to get into. If you guys recall, there was a movie a couple years back, it was called Cinderella Man, right? Well, in boxing today, you have a whole bunch of Cinderella men, and they're all on the coincidental list. Just like the Cinderella story, Cinderella, she's the most disrespected, the most despised. And while the stepmother and the stepsisters had so much disdain for Cinderella, they envied her. Cinderella was the hardest working person in the house, but she got no credit for it. Sound familiar? In fact, the harder she worked, the more hated she was. Now, we all know that when Guillermo Rigo called out Nonito Donaire, dominated the man. He stood there toe-to-toe with him at times in the fight. He was about 20 pounds smaller than Donaire. Damn near broke his eye socket in the 12th round. Got knocked down in the fight. Won convincingly. And from that point, Guillermo Rigo was more disrespected after he beat Donaire than he was before he beat Donaire. In fact, they damn near cursed the man. HBO removed him from the network. They had him fighting all the way in Japan, where they wouldn't even televise his fight. Where he got some of his most impressive knockouts, they did not want to televise it. You know why? Because HBO wanted to sabotage Guillermo Rigo's name. Just like the evil stepsisters and the stepmother, when Cinderella, when she came up with a beautiful dress to go to the ball, what did the stepsisters do? They tore up the dress. They ripped it to shreds so Cinderella couldn't go to the ball. Right? Everywhere Rigo turned, there was some unnecessary roadblock in front of him, trying to obstruct him from reaching pound for pound superstar or just star status, period. Just receiving the credit that he deserves. There was always some type of roadblock that was thrown in front of Rigo to prevent him from reaching this point that he's about to reach when he faces Lomachenko this December 9th. Now, once again, guys, this is an uphill battle for Rigo. There's no guarantee he wins this fight. In fact, if Lomachenko wins this fight, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Rigo has to move up 2 weight classes. He's the shorter fighter. He's the older fighter. All odds are against him in this fight. Going back to the Cinderella analogy, the difference from the Cinderella Disney story as opposed to the Cinderella story in boxing is when you watch the story, when you read the book, who are you rooting for? You're rooting for Cinderella, right? You're rooting for the underdog. You're rooting for the one that's being disrespected and mistreated. But it is the complete contrary in the sport of boxing. Because in boxing, the vast majority of fans, they actually root against Cinderella. In the sport of boxing, the fans hate Cinderella. They despise Cinderella. And they actually root for the stepsisters and the stepmother. Okay? And of course, when I say the majority of boxing fans, of course, we're talking about the decafs. We're talking about the fans that base things on race, nationality, and pride, and emotion. Those are the fans that root against Cinderella. Those are the fans that boo Cinderella. And they cheer for the stepsisters and the stepmom once again. You don't believe me? Look at the Andre Ward situation. Andre Ward, you know, a lot of fighters have these killer nicknames, right? Like the Destroyer, you know, the Bomber, whatever. You know, Pazmanian Devil, you know, Vidi Paz, his nickname was the Devil. Here you have a guy, Andre Ward, what is his nickname? Son of God. This man ain't done nothing bad to anyone. All he ever wanted to do was be the best in the sport of boxing. Humble guy, right? But yet, before his 2 fights with Sergey Kovalev, around the time that Andre Ward started calling out Gennady Golovkin, Andre Ward was one of the most disrespected fighters in the sport of boxing. He was truly a Cinderella man. I remember once again when he signed his deal with HBO, Dan Rafael, who represents ESPN. We might as well just say ESPN because he is the one that represents ESPN boxing. ESPN and Dan Rafael, do you know that they refused to go out and cover Andre Ward's last 2 fights that were in the country that ESPN is in? It's very important that I note that, because in any other country, can you imagine in the UK? Can you imagine if ESPN was based in the UK and the UK gold medalist who won a gold medal for the country was fighting in the country? Can you imagine UK media not showing up to cover the fight? I'm talking about UK mainstream media. It would never happen. It would never happen. But here in the States, Andre Ward, he fights against Sullivan Barrera. Dan Rafael doesn't even fly over there to cover the event. Oh, but Dan Rafael, he then flew out to a different country to cover 2 foreigners that weren't even from the country in Gennady Golovkin versus Kell Brook. Oh, but when Errol Spence fought Kell Brook, that same Dan Rafael didn't fly out there. And to add insult to injury, Dan Rafael is getting paid to go out there and cover these fights. See, me on the other hand, I come out pocket the majority of times when I'm traveling to these different countries and different states just to cover these boxing events. So you have a man that could have went out and covered a boxing event for free to cover your own countrymen and get paid in the process. That right there is truly the Cinderella effect. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.